Hello, my name is Sahil Bhagat and I'll be presenting Lab Report 4 for BB2904. This lab is called Animal Behavior 2. So the purpose of this lab is twofold. First is to observe and understand the territorial and mating behavior of house crickets, also known as Acheta domesticus. And the second is to observe and understand the habitat preference of house crickets. The reason we are doing this lab is because every species exhibit certain behaviors for mating and for their personal space. And using house crickets as one example will help us give us some insight into different types of behaviors that a species can exhibit. So a little bit of background on crickets. So male crickets are considered very territorial and they protect their grounds. Male crickets will also try to court females if there are any females available or fight for them against other males. There's a chart below here that shows different aggression levels that go from level 1 to level 5 in increasing from 1 through 5. The F in this chart here shows that the male follows the female for at least 5 seconds, and G is when the male is guarding the female. Other background information is that there are various differences between males and female crickets. For example, the female has an ovipositor, which you can see in this figure here, which males don't have. The differences is also in wings. The male wings and the female wings have different patterns. And also to attract females, males sing certain songs in order to attract them. Since we've been learning about habitat, just to give you a background, various animals have their own habitat, and it suits their needs for food and for temperature and other conditions. So I'll talk more about that later. So before this experiment, the procedures were taken from an online document on MyWPI. It was titled BB2904 Lab for Animal Behavior 2, and it was from Professor Buchholz and Alison Hunter. And quickly we'll be doing an experiment with substrate preferences for house crickets. There will be 4 different areas in a cage, which will have sand, soil, rocks, and cage bottom, and the time will be measured of where the house cricket stays overall in 10 minutes. Okay, so a little bit of results and discussion. So for this, the first part where we talk about crickets encountering each other, it is hypothesized when there are 2 males present, there will be aggression seen between them. When 2 males encounter each other, they were aggressive initially, but they adjusted to each other's presence. For example, as seen in Table 2, one can see that when the new male cricket is introduced to a territorial male cricket, the aggression level was 1 until they realized that the other existed. After that, the aggression level jumped to 4 and they became violent. The next few contacts remained at high aggression level, around 2 and 3. However, as time went on, they became more docile and appeared to avoid each other. It is possible that the introduced male was searching the environment for an escape route, while the territorial male stayed and guarded the safe area. The observation was different, however, when the 2 male crickets were of opposite gender. There was not much rise in aggression, nor there is direct contact. And at some points, you will see that the male was following the female, as shown in this video. So you can see here that the blue dotted is a male and the pink dot is a female, and the female is avoiding the male while the male is trying to follow her. Alright, so then we move on to aggressiveness. So in my opinion, crickets are indeed territorial, and it was seen from this lab, and this is supported with various instances in the lab. When observing 2 or 3 crickets, it is seen that the territorial cricket was much more defensive than the others. This can be seen from this video. So the territorial cricket forced out the blue dotted cricket, which was the newly introduced cricket. The observed data is also shown in Table 6. So the crickets did not seem to actually defend their territory, except they show signs of aggression, such as raising of their wings. Sometimes the crickets do sing songs, and they do that while they flap their wings. The introduced cricket and the territorial cricket never actually fought. In fact, the same situation of the 2 male cricket when they were introduced, they basically circled around each other but they never actually did anything. Fighting is not actually required to resolve the situation, because many times, even though they act that they're going to fight, either one of the parties actually moves away, so they don't seem to be that aggressive. They do have ownership in some regards, because the territorial cricket will actually take one part, for example, that egg cart, and just stay there. Sometimes they do exhibit fighting behavior, but it was not noticed in at least our experiments. In a few instances, there was a little bit of song singing by one of the crickets, and it is linked to aggressive behavior. For example, as seen in Table 2 in the previous slide, songs was only observed when the two males were violent towards each other, and the aggression level was 4. The songs were used not only just to ward off the other male, but it was also sometimes to attract the female. When females were introduced into the cage, the behavior of the male became more of a guard for the female rather than fighting each other. Table 2 looks at the behavior of two males, and it is seen that the territorial male is aggressive towards the introduced male. However, at the end, the introduced male is more afraid and runs around the cage and climbing the wall. So it is hypothesized that both the male and female cricket will prefer the soil substrate. Results showed that the male preferred the sand, and while the females preferred the soil. Sorry, I meant to say that the males, clearly from the chart below with the class data, it shows that both the male and the female preferred the soil more than any of the other territory surfaces. The chart from only the group data, it's very hard to see from the individual males and females whether there was any correlation between what they preferred. And the tables for this data is shown besides the graphs. So in order to see if there was any significance to this data of preference of substrate, the class data for all crickets, the null hypothesis was there was no difference in preference of substrate by crickets. After doing an ANOVA analysis, it was seen that the p-value is less than 0.05. Thus, the null hypothesis is rejected, and there is preference seen towards a substrate, at least from the data we were given for the class. Specifically for the male, from the data we compiled as a class, the null hypothesis is accepted because the p-value is greater than 0.05. So there is indeed no preference seen towards a specific type of substrate by the male crickets. And finally, from the class data for the female crickets, the null hypothesis was that there is no preference seen towards any type of specific substrate by the female crickets, but after doing the ANOVA, the null hypothesis was rejected because the p-value is less than 0.05. So finally, the females did have a preference towards a specific substrate. And that is all I have for this lab report. I did only use one source, which was Professor Buckle's procedures, and that's all I have. Thank you very much.